There was something magical about the sensation of Bakugou melting into his embrace, Ichiro thought. He could feel the tension in his frame recede as his muscles eased and softened, and he pressed closer, awash in the sensation. He smelled perfect, his scent spicy like the kind of chilies that set your mouth aflame and heavy like dark chocolate on the tongue. Ichiro groaned into his neck, gently scraping his sharp teeth along the curve of his neck. Keening, Bakugou arched into the sensation, totally shameless in his ecstasy. Not that this was surprising, as Ichiro was beginning to realize that Bakugou was pretty shameless in everything. He'd known that Bakugou was like that in his professional and personal life, but he hadn't realized his intensity. His absolute bombastic nature and utter refusal to feel shame for who he was would extend to intimate encounters too. And yet, it was just like him to be that way. Shameless, open, driven, absolutely certain of what he wanted and what would be required to achieve it. Bakugou had held himself back for so long, so damn long, simply because he thought Ichiro wouldn't be interested, and the realization that he'd been burying this part of himself, closing himself off, refusing to admit what he wanted so that Ichiro wouldn't be upset by it, even though he wouldn't have. But that wasn't really the point. Ichiro never wanted to see Bakugou hold himself back on his account. Not professionally, not personally, not ever. And so, as Bakugou basked in his attention, coming undone at every touch, he could feel his own body relaxing, easing into the sensation, relishing in the familiarity of being close to Bakugou. All too soon, he pulled back with a grunt. "Oi." His voice was more strained than he expected. After clearing his throat a few times, he continued. "You hungry?" Ichiro's first instinct was to deny it. Hadn't they just eaten lunch? But then his stomach made a small grumbling noise and Bakugou poked his abdomen, giving it the stink eye. "That's the third time it's done that." His gaze lifted to meet Ichiro's, daring him to contradict the statement. "Really, I hadn't noticed," he replied honestly, mentally chiding his stomach for not keeping it together. He'd been really enjoying the skin-to-skin contact with Bakugou, and frankly was peeved that his body decided it needed food to the point that it insisted on making noise about it. "Yeah, well, we should probably eat something anyway." Bakugou eased off his bed and tugged his pants on. "It's getting late." Ichiro glanced at the clock, blinked twice, and stared hard. He hadn't even noticed the time passing. "Holy shit, where the hell did the time go?" Bakugou just snickered. "Yeah, that's what I was wondering too." He pulled his shirt on, then glanced over his shoulder to glare at Ichiro. "Are you coming, or am I supposed to just fucking eat dinner by myself?" "Oh." Ichiro leapt out of bed too, struggling into his own pair of pants, tugging his shirt back on and patting his head anxiously to ensure the spikes hadn't gone all floppy. They had, but then Bakugou reached up and ruffled his hair, which really just ruined all of the work that had gone into his hairstyle. "You look too damn hot. Don't you have, like, a hat or something? Damn. Everyone in the whole place is gonna want your number." "Yeah, but they can't have it. I don't care if anyone else likes how I look anyway. I just want you to think I look good." "Hell, you know I think you look fucking sexy as hell. And if you didn't, well, you do now." He jabbed an elbow into Ichiro's ribs. "Let's go get some fucking food." They had barely started their meal when Kirishima set his fork down, his face stony. It was a familiar look on his face, one he reserved for only the gravest of conversations. Carefully, Katsuki took another bite, then set down his chopsticks. He had the feeling that whatever Kirishima was about to bring up, it wasn't going to be light dinner conversation. "So, about that, he ducked his head, clearing his throat. "That, you know, "I don't, actually, because all you've said is that." Katsuki wasn't sure if he was amused or irritated by Kirishima's hesitation, though he was leaning towards irritated. "That alpha who..." His eyes flicked up to meet Katsuki's, narrowing slightly, then widening. "Don't you dare say hurt you," Katsuki thought viciously. "Don't you fucking dare." "Who assaulted you? Like a coward." Katsuki blinked twice before he could find the words to respond, especially since those hadn't been the words he'd expected to come from Kirishima's mouth. "What about that asshole?" I mean, I know I asked last night, but I figured it might be good for me to ask in person. Kirishima moved his food around his plate without actually taking a bite. About, you know. He was so sick of you know, when no, he didn't fucking know.
No idea what you're talking about. Just say what you're thinking.
So, you do want to press charges? Kirishima leaned forward, his face earnest. Against the Alpha, you want to go through that whole process. It's okay if you don't want to. The look in his eyes said he really hoped he wanted to chase after the bastard. That was fine with him, because he wasn't about to let that asshole just go on living his life after all he'd done to him, and probably other mandatory residents before him. Sighing heavily, he leaned back in his chair.
I would. But good luck getting any charges to stick. He's fucking smart, like I said.
Right. Public indecency wouldn't work because it's a heat house, so...
The most likely thing to get him on is stealing the suppressants, since stealing meds from people is generally frowned upon. They are prescription meds, though, so it's not likely to be considered as bad. Still, between those thefts and the inappropriate behavior, I'm sure you could make a case that taking away someone's suppressants and screwing with their heat is premeditated assault.
He leaned forward, placing a flat palm on the table for emphasis.
And this definitely isn't his first time pulling this shit. He's had a lot of fucking practice, I could tell. You know those villains who know exactly how much shit to pull without getting in real big trouble? He's like one of those.
Kirishima made a face at that, and Katsuki agreed wholly with the sentiment that he could read on the redhead's expressive face. Those sorts of villains were the worst. They knew what they were doing to the extent that they knew how to game the system and do just enough damage to seem as dangerous, but not so much as to attract major attention. They just liked to watch the world burn, and knew how to get away with it. It fucking sucked. Apparently there's been a pattern of rapes being reported from this heat house. They haven't been able to nail down a specific suspect, but all of the victims reported that the Alpha did something to trigger their heats or steal their suppressants.
He's fucking based out of a single heat house? Is this guy for fucking real? Who the hell has the balls to pull something like that? How the hell hasn't anyone caught him?
The look on Kirishima's face told him he was missing something.
What? Does he wear a fucking mask?
Kind of. Every single description of him has a different eye or hair color, and his build is really nondescript and average, so there's nothing really easily identifiable about him.
Oh shit. So his boring face is actually a fucking mask to let him hide in plain sight.
Katsuki felt a grudging admiration that quickly soured into disgust.
He's fucking good at this shit.
He hated to even admit it. Kirishima bit his lip and nodded. There is one good point about all this, though.
What might that be?
He's got a pattern. We know where he'll be looking for his victim, and we know he'll be looking for a male mandatory resident. A slow smile crept across Katsuki's face as he put the pieces together.
You're talking about a sting operation.
He curled his hands into fists, his grin stretching wider as he thought about pounding them into the smug bastard's face.
Hell yeah. Where do I fucking sign up?